Jei Cyclist. I came across your
Yes.
music just about a week ago, and I was very impressed with your music. I'm a big fan, so thank you for being here. Um, can you start off by telling a little bit about why you started making music?
Right. Thank you, Jack. The honor is all mine. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely,
Uh,
thank you.
so so I started out making music as a hobby actually, because I've always played guitar. I loved singing as well. So when I was 17, I wanted to like surprise my girlfriend at the time. So I covered a well-known Chinese song.
Okay,
But I wanted to make it sort of my own, make it special for her, right? Talking
right,
about our stories. So I
sure.
changed the lyrics. And because Chinese is like a tonal language, as four tones. Basically, most of the Chinese characters have different meanings if said in different tongues. The four tones will hugely affect the way you write melodies if you're writing in Chinese.
Sure.
For example, the first tone is flat, is like ma. Second tone is rising, ma. The third is falling and rising. The final fourth is falling. They mean different things. So because you're writing in like actual meaningful Chinese words, the melody will be hugely affected. So if you meant to sing something in the second rising tone, but the melody falls down, it'll change the meaning of the word or the character. So
Sure.
naturally and accidentally, I needed to change the melody of the original song I was covering.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I realized, okay, so I changed the melodies, I changed the words, this is songwriting. I realized songwriting is not as hard as I imagined at all.
Wow. Okay, so you discovered that it was like a natural skill that you had based on that experience?
Um, I think most people have it, unless you're tone deaf, I guess.
Really? So you
uh,
think most people have that musical skill somewhere within them?
yeah, definitely. I think
Very
so.
interesting. Okay.
Definitely. Unless you're tone deaf, that I cannot help.
Understood.
Yeah.
So how did you start like making music and recording the songs that you write that you started writing after you wrote that song for your girlfriend and you realized, oh, I can start making music. I think I have, a skill for this type of thing. How did you
Yeah.
actually go about like procuring whether that's like studio time or like amassing like other people to make music with? How did you go about that?
Right. So I started out pretty much simple. Like I've got a computer, I've got MacBook. I downloaded Logic Pro basically. And then I've always had my guitar. I bought a microphone, a mic stand, audio interface. I learned everything on YouTube, how to connect everything, how to record your vocals, how to record your guitar, pretty much the same thing, and how to mix. Music production in the simplest form, I guess, is that you only need a computer, an audio interface, and a microphone.
Wow.
Basically, that's it. It can get very complicated as well, because right now, if when I was recording my album Cyclists, I needed to go to the studio using fancier equipments. But all of that can also be done on a computer, just like that.
Right. That's interesting because one of the questions I had here on my list of questions, I'm going to take a glance at it here. It was about like the production. Let me find it.
Yeah,
The question was, what other skills aside from music might contribute to your efforts now, such as like editing, software proficiency to aid
yeah,
in that production? I think you answered that a little bit, but I figured maybe that'd be a good segue to kind of jump into now since you mentioned that.
yeah, sure. Um, it's a lot of stuff, man. Being an independent artist, you that means you have to do the songwriting, music production, mixing, mastering, and after all of that, the real work comes. You have to try to find a way to market your songs, market your music, try to advertise yourself, just reach out to people, networking, socializing, a lot of that. But if you're just focusing on music production, I guess um, it's very important to learn your DAW.
To learn your what?
DAW, DAW, for example, Logic Pro or Ableton Live.
Okay,
It's called
got it.
DAW. Yeah, yeah,
And
it's very
so
important.
as far as like the networking aspect, how are you networking with like other like for example on your latest album, I think there was like four different artists that
Yeah.
were featured on that album. How did you go about networking with those types of people, or I guess maybe I could ask like how do you seek out partnerships and collaborations with people? What does that process look like?
Yeah, most of the artists I feature on my album, I already knew them back when I was in the reality show, if you don't know about that story. So I was
No,
in a
no.
right, I was in a Chinese reality show, believe or not.
Wow. Okay. I guess I didn't realize that. No, I looked at your Instagram a
Yeah,
little
no,
bit. I did a little bit of stalking, but I guess perhaps not enough.
that's okay. It's okay. So I went to this Chinese reality music show, basically.
And when
It
was that?
was
When was that?
2021. So I was in Melbourne going through my master degree. And then I found myself in this audition for this Chinese show. It was a huge, huge IP though. Like the show is hugely popular in China. It was a sequel called
Wow.
The Coming One. And it was the fifth season. The show didn't turn out to be a hit due to COVID or due to like other political reasons about the entertainment
Sure.
business in China.
Sure.
But regardless, the resources was good. Musicians I've met there, the you know top executives of label companies also there. I met a lot of people through that show, basically.
Wow. So that sounds like it was a really beneficial experience just for like the networking and getting exposed
Definitely,
to people within the industry. That's really cool.
definitely.
Do you ever get recognized on the street due to the popularity of that show?
Yeah, yeah.
Really? Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, if you search it up, it's actually one of the biggest IP in China, the biggest reality show in China. It's just there are a lot of reality shows in China, and due to like TikTok or like shorts videos, this form of formality of entertainment, when this form of entertainment came around, reality shows actually faded a bit. So
Yeah, I can see that. That's probably more of a global thing, I would imagine, with the proliferation of social
exactly.
media. Absolutely. That's actually another thing I wanted to talk to you about. TikTok, right? It's ByteDance. It's a Chinese company. You're based out
Yeah,
of China. Um,
yeah.
I think it's interesting how many Americans and people in the Western world they seem to have hesitations about TikTok's or ByteDance's terms and conditions, and namely the what some people refer to as the invasive nature of the terms and conditions. How do you feel about those things when you hear people say things like that?
Right. I didn't imagine we'd get political this quick. But yeah, I mean, as a Chinese born and raised in China, right? Until I was 14, I went to New Zealand. And then I spent 3 years in China now. So I've been kind of struggling with a lot of Chinese policies as well. The things that Chinese government has put on us. There are good sides and bad sides. For example, like uh, we pay everything. We do everything on one software, on one app. Basically, it's called WeChat or Alipay. We can pay with it. We can socialize or chat with it.
Sure.
It's very convenient. Do I sacrifice my privacy? Do they know anytime where I'm at? Yes, but I guess this is how you have to do it in China. Regarding that in America though, I've seen like the code video with the TikTok Binance Singaporean executive. I've seen that video. I mean, I think it's more about the US government, their concern, rather than American people's concern.
Sure. I would
Cause,
agree with
cause,
that.
yeah, cause TikTok is widely famous. It's
Absolutely.
widely
Yeah,
popular.
for sure.
Do
So
you, yeah.
how do you believe that the lack of privacy manifests itself? I guess you just mentioned that it's more like a governmental concern more than like a people concern, but do you ever maybe think it might end up becoming a concern for like the general population in any way?
I mean, a lot of the times our so-called privacy is doesn't really matter that much because we're not celebrities or whatever. We're not governmental important people. It's understandable for like governmental officials to not use TikTok or not. Do you know Chinese governmental officials, they are not allowed to drive Tesla?
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's for the same reason because they collect data of where you're
Absolutely.
at. But for normal citizens, I guess it's okay to let them know where you're at any time because they wouldn't do anything about it anyway.
Right.
They most likely to use it for advertising, to sell your data to other third-party companies to, to better target audience your like marketing strategies, which is
Sure.
also sometimes good for you because you see things that you're interested.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
mm.
So, you mentioned that when you were 14, you moved to New Zealand. Why?
I went there to study.
Okay, for your
Yeah.
master's degree. What were you studying?
Architecture and landscape architecture.
Okay, and do you ever plan on like using those skills, or are you like at this point in your life, are you like full focused on music?
I'm fully focused on music right now, but the things I've learned through architecture and landscape architecture, obviously I can use them um, it, a lot in music, believe it or not.
Really? In what ways? That's
Photoshop,
interesting.
Photoshop skills, self-learning skills,
Right.
um, and a lot of the sense, in a lot of sense, architecture is really related to music because you have to build a concept. You have to have a concept first, and then try to create things around this concept. In
Absolutely.
music, it's the same, yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, you don't hear a lot about like the parallels between architecture and music, I guess, very often, but it totally makes sense. I can see where you're coming from when you say that.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any like working experience outside of making music, like maybe whether when you were younger or just like on the side at all? Do you like work any other jobs at all or
I just remember I worked in a canteen when I was in high school.
a
Um,
canteen? What is that? Like
yeah.
a restaurant?
Yeah, like a small restaurant in school.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. And
I also taught English in Shanghai for a period of time.
really,
Yeah.
you're very proficient with English. Is that common for people in China?
No, not at all.
How'd you manage to learn? Did you learn when you moved to New Zealand or did you know before?
English is actually mandatory in Chinese schools.
Oh, that's what I was asking. Yeah, like if it's common for people in China to learn English like in school.
Right, like it's a mandatory subject to take.
Okay.
Uh, ever since you were like primary school, but a lot of people just suck at it. If
Right.
you know what I mean.
And why is
Yeah.
it mandatory?
English is important. It's international language. It should be mandatory.
Right, sure. Do you speak any other languages other than Chinese and English?
Unfortunately, no.
I
I hope
understand.
so.
I understand. I've been doing the Duolingo for German lately. I'm not like
Right,
by any means fluent yet, but I think it's such a good skill, just like for the health of your mind and just to keep your brain active. I think it's like one of the healthiest things that people can do, and it's like, especially given the state of America, it's like no one knows what the future in this country looks like. It might be worth being able to speak some type of European language, something I think about
right,
on the back burner.
right. But why German? German is, I heard it's complicated.
Both my grandparents are German,
Oh,
and both my grandmothers are English. But I already
right.
speak English, so I figured I might as well choose German. So
Yeah,
no particular reason other than the fact that my grandfathers are both German. But yeah, that's about
that's
it.
a pretty solid reason.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Get in touch with my roots a little bit, I suppose.
Exactly.
Um, one of the things I wanted to ask you, just out of curiosity, do you do the
Sure.
drums on your album?
No, the drums were done by some of the songs the drums were electronic. Most of the songs the drums were done by Zhi Tong Xu. So this Chinese drummer who I think is the best in China right now.
Wow.
He studied he grew up in Germany as well.
No kidding.
Yeah, he got his PhD in drums in Germany.
I didn't even know
Yeah.
that was a thing. A PhD in drumming.
Yes.
So the reason I ask is just because one of my best friends actually he used to be the drummer in a band. They're like
Yeah.
an indie rock group here in America,
Right,
and so he was the drummer for that band up until just a couple years ago.
right.
I showed him your music, and he was like, "Dude, I wonder if Jay plays the drums because those drums are insane." So it's funny to
Yeah.
hear you say that, like you think he's one of the best. Because my drummer friend, who's very very talented,
It's,
he said the same
right.
thing. So I just figured I'd ask you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with me when I say he's the best.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Mm.
how do you meet him then?
Uh, I guess it's through mutual friends.
Very cool.
I met this guy in the reality show, and then this guy knew this guy.
Sure, makes sense.
So he's just introduced me, and my demo at the time, he liked my music, so I was like, why don't you jump in and play the drums for me? Because I really like Yusuf Deyes. I'd heard him play once in Shanghai live, and I was like, yo, who is this guy? This guy is the Chinese Yusuf Deyes.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome that
Yeah.
you got him to work on your project with you. It's a great album, man. The
Thank you,
song
man.
"Minor but Major." I'm going to tell you a quick story about how I discovered your music, actually, and maybe you'll think
Right.
it's weird or funny. I was
Okay.
uh I was looking at the lyrics to the song "Flexorcis" by the Voids, and
Yeah.
at the bottom of the song, in the song credits, it said Julian Casablancas and Minor but Major listed as like the songwriters. And so I was like,
Yeah.
I wonder if Minor but Major is like maybe their own entity or recording label. And so I looked it up, and the first thing that popped up on Google was it said "Song by Jei Cyclist." I was like, I've never heard of
Yeah.
this guy. So I immediately listened to it. I was like, this is an awesome song. This is great.
Thank you. Yeah. Sweet.
Is he
Minor major is yeah.
you go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say about Minor but Major.
Minor major is the Instagram ID of the Strokes.
Yeah, it's just yeah,
Yeah.
right. Exactly. I was going to
Yeah.
ask you if maybe that's an influence of yours at all.
Um, well, sort of I saw this ID and then I was immediately um like like I thought, wow, this is what I believe in. Because in my music a lot of times I don't use if you know about music theory, you either write in key of major or key of minor.
Sure.
But a lot of times they are relative. A major key can sound really minor in a certain context. So that's how I like my music to be. And also I believe minor or major can also mean other things meaningful in life. So I've actually got this tattooed on my back.
Really? Oh, you have a tattoo
Yeah.
Minor but Major on your back?
Yeah.
Oh, very
If
cool.
if you if you can see. Can you see it?
I can see the top of it. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It might be hidden by the chain a little bit, but that's cool.
The guitarist of minor but major, if you don't know him, Lawrence Cool. He is the best guitarist in China, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I think I commented on your Instagram like that solo at the end of that song goes pretty hard. I love it, dude.
It's so hard. It's 7/8 as well.
What do you mean 7/8? I'm not very familiar
Oh,
with music theory, so
oh,
I
it's okay.
apologize if I'm
No, no,
not
no, it's
able to
okay.
hang.
No, it's okay. Most of the songs, basically popular music is in 4/4. So there are four beats in a bar, and you count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right, okay.
So 7/8 is basically 8 beats in a bar, and you count 7 beats. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, like
Okay.
that. So it's odd meter signature. Odd
Right, very
signature. Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Very
Mm.
cool. Where do you think that comes from? Like,
The
was
what?
there like a certain artist that popularized that style? Or maybe that's a really stupid
Oh,
question, and I apologize if it is.
no, no, it's okay. Uh, no, yeah, I think it's normal. It's common to do it like that. Especially in jazz music.
Got it. Oh, yeah, I can see
Yeah,
that for sure. Are you a big
yeah,
jazz fan?
yeah, definitely,
Yeah, I can kind of
definitely,
tell by the album. It has a lot of different sounds, but I can kind of see maybe a little bit of jazz influence in there.
definitely. The drum is absolutely jazz. You cannot
Yeah,
replicate it.
for sure. Have you ever been to America, man?
No, unfortunately, I want to go.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've been dying to go. I know a lot of my friends are all in America. All my friends
really?
are in America. Yeah.
How do you meet them?
Not just Chinese friends or like American friends that came to China or in Melbourne.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Where would you go in America if you had to pick like maybe one or two or three places that you'd really prefer to visit?
New York, LA, San Francisco, a
Those are
lot
all
of
our best
places,
cities.
man.
Yeah.
They're
Those
all
are
the
probably
best
the
cities,
top three.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say New York and LA are definitely the best cities we have. A lot of people talk down on Los Angeles because the politics and it's, a bit different than the
Yeah,
rest of the country. Um,
right.
but dude, that is my favorite city probably ever. I'm very lucky that I have family
Right.
that live out in Los Angeles.
Oh,
I
right.
have, yeah, a couple different aunts and uncles that live down there. And so when I was a kid, I would always get to go visit them. And it's just
Right.
so cool, man. If you ever get a chance to go, you totally should.
Yeah, I'll connect you when I go actually.
Yeah, please do. If you're ever in Chicago, are you familiar with Chicago?
Yeah, well, the city of crime or I'm
Yeah, they
kidding.
say that. Um,
Yeah,
but fun fact for you. So I'm an hour away from this town called Muscatine, Iowa, and Muscatine is a very small, tiny farm town, but it's famous because in 1984 or maybe 1985, the
yeah.
current president of China, President Xi, he lived in Muscatine, Iowa when he was studying agriculture.
Right. President Jiang Zemin, right? I believe.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe I mispronounced his name, but the current president over there of China,
Wait,
even in,
the
yeah,
current president of China, Xi?
yeah, absolutely.
President Xi?
Yes, yeah. I don't forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it, but it's President XI.
Yeah, Xi.
She is that how you spell you pronounce
Yeah,
it?
Xi, yeah.
She. Okay, yeah. So why does music matter to you? Is it personal expression, or is it that you really have a certain type of message that you're keen to share with others? What's important to you about music?
Yeah, I guess for me, cause I used to dance when I was little, break dancing. I was a
Wow.
b-boy. I was a
Yeah.
b-boy for almost 10 years.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, I went all serious on dancing back when I was a child. I've got a really nice coach, taking me to Korea to battle and everything. I won national champion, of the youth group back
Wow.
in 2012 in China. But back then, breakdancing or like hip hop culture wasn't really mature in China. That's why I got the championship, I guess. But anyway, I've tried dancing, I've tried painting, but music was what really like struck me as the best tool to express feelings and stories. I guess it's all about storytelling
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not very musical myself, or at least I haven't explored a whole lot of that part of myself. But I find a great amount of expression in just writing. I just write like newsletters and stuff, just because
yeah,
I really enjoy getting the opportunity to just be present with my thoughts and express myself that way. I think it's a really
exactly.
healthy thing to do, and also just like a great skill to cultivate because. I mean, whether no matter what like path you take in life, being able to write and communicate a given message with others it's really like a skill, perhaps even an art form. Would you agree?
Definitely, definitely.
Obviously, I mean, especially in the context of songwriting, being an art, but even just in general, I find great satisfaction in that. So I can relate to that
Yeah.
to a degree. Um, so what is like the cultural or music scene in China like contrast with like Australia or New Zealand or America or Canada, say?
Yeah, I guess Chinese people, it's all about the audience, right? In the world of capitalism, even though Chinese, you might see China as communist, but it's
That's how it's
also,
often made out to be.
yeah, but it's not actually
Right.
communist. Communism is actually capitalism with um with a centralized government, basically.
Right.
Yeah, so the audience is not as cultured and educated as overseas, maybe. So a lot of the times, musicians or other formal artists, they struggle to be them true selves. They struggle to express what they really want to say and really want to do, because they need to make money, because they need to meet the audience need. The audience want to hear pop songs in 4/4. You cannot give them 7/8. If you give them that, there'll just be no streams.
Right.
But on Spotify and in Apple Music, I guess um, even the smallest, most independent artists have a certain following of their own.
Yes, and so in your album Cyclists, it's both written in English and there's also Chinese lyrics in there. How do you balance like the mesh of English and Chinese throughout the album, and what made you want to do it that way?
Right, actually, the entire album is in English. The only Chinese part is the monologue of Indecision, the
Right, the
song
woman,
Indecision. Yeah,
right? She's talking in
yeah,
Chinese.
yeah. The girl is talking in Chinese, but the lyrics and everything are all in Chinese, are all in English.
Okay, got
So,
it. Yeah, right, right.
so I actually suck at writing Chinese and English together because there's this certain vibe difference that I just absolutely cringe when I write.
What do you mean
It's
by
very
that?
like it's very difficult to fit Chinese into a rather fashionable music form, if you know, this genre style. For
Right.
example, like independent music has this vibe that when you hear it, you know it's independent music. It's
Yeah.
not popular music you hear on radio. And it's really cringe to hear Chinese in that because I guess some of it has to do with a mother tongue shame that I have. I guess if you're studying Germany, you'll know what I'm talking about, right? You
Not
have more
exactly.
sense. You have more sense when you're speaking your own mother tongue. A lot
Oh,
of the
okay, yeah,
words,
sure.
yeah, a lot of the words you just cannot say it because you feel ashamed or like you feel like shy or whatever. You have
Or they
more
don't
sense to it.
translate exactly, perhaps.
Yeah, but when you're speaking another language, for example, like Japanese, you're not particularly familiar with, you can say like the most unbearable things ever.
Really?
Yeah, like you wouldn't know, you wouldn't feel how it sounds out, right? For example, I love you is so much easier for me to say than 我爱你. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting. I've never really thought about that, I guess. Um,
Yeah,
and so
it's
why do you
real.
think it's more why do you think it's more comfortable to say it in English then, even though the meaning might be the same?
Yeah, because I would feel less cringe when I say a lot of things and different culture as well.
So it's just like a
Um,
cultural thing then, like the cultural vibe around those like phrases or those meanings.
yeah, because the culture behind English is actually really open and free. You can say whatever you want. But in
Right.
Chinese, there's this culture of I don't know how to put it in a correct word. Like this culture of shyness, this culture of Confucianism. If you
Really?
know what I'm
See,
talking about.
I guess it makes sense when you say that, but I guess I'd never really thought about that, that there's like a different cultural limitation on the way that we communicate with each other. I never really thought of that, but that's really fascinating.
Yeah, that's really, really common in for I guess for bilingual people.
And so that's why you decided to kind of write the music in English because it allowed you to better express yourself that way. Am I kind of parroting that back to you correctly?
Yeah, and also the fact that English sounds so much cooler in the genre I am writing.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So who are some like your biggest musical inspirations?
I don't know if you know them. Tom Misch is definitely my top one.
Is
Frank
that a
Ocean.
oh what was the first one you said?
Tom Misch.
I'm not very familiar. I'm a great fan of Frank Ocean though. I really love his
Right,
work.
right. Yeah, Frank Ocean is much more popular, but Tom Misch is he's the jam. You should definitely check him out.
I'm gonna write that down. How do you spell the last name?
Misch.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna check
You'll
that out.
definitely love him. Yeah.
I'm always kind of looking for like new music and especially like indie music or less popular music because I find that I resonate with more of the stuff that's more underground, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure you can relate to that.
Yeah, people's lives is not always about money and fame.
Sure. So I saw on your Instagram as I was stalking you a little bit, I scrolled back on your Instagram and I saw that you used to be into skateboarding. Is
Yeah,
that a
yeah.
popular part of the Chinese underground scene as it is in America?
Uh, I don't think so. But in
Really?
China, it's getting popular in China.
And why is it, what's causing that? Is it just due to social media and more of like a global appeal?
I guess a lot of the things. they're cool on its own. Like skating is fun and cool on its own. It's just a lot of people don't, they haven't got the like cultural environment for them to see the friends besides them that does this, like.
Right. Do you
And
have like a lot of like public skate parks in China?
I think a lot of cities do now. Shanghai does.
Sure.
Shanghai has a lot, yeah.
When I was growing up, when I was in like first, second, third grade, my friends and I were really into skateboarding, and it's really nice
Right.
because where we live, there's all these like public skate parks, and so even
Yeah.
if like you're not very good, you can still kind of go hang out with your buddies and just kind of,
Yeah, yeah.
hang out and skate, and you don't have to like pay a fee because they're public parks. So,
Right.
it kind of made me think of those experiences. Um,
Yeah, I used to
um,
skate in Melbourne and everybody was so good.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be bigger in Australia, just maybe by virtue of the surfing scene over there.
Yeah, Melbourne is a lot of the world champion skaters are from Australia, no?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Have you ever done any surfing?
Yeah, yeah.
Are you good at it?
No?
It's pretty tough. Yeah, dude. My when I went to Los Angeles the past couple times, my aunt and uncle have surfboards, and so I went out on to Manhattan Beach in Los Angeles, and I tried surfing, and I'm
Yeah,
not very good. I got up a couple times, and it's like
right.
really fun. Oh, it's so fucking fun, dude. I love it. It's just
Yeah.
really difficult. It's an insane workout.
Yes, it is. And also, I think talking about surfing, I think the first time I ever surfed, it changed the way I see life. I think,
Really?
dude, because I was so far into the ocean, right? So when I look back, I could barely see like the beach.
Right.
So I just felt like I was in the middle of nowhere, alone by myself. It just made me realize how small I am, how small the people actually are as individuals compared to the rest of the world. And when you're
Yeah,
actually stranded like that, there's really no help.
sure. Yeah, I guess that it does invoke a very pensive state of reflection. I can totally relate to that. I would agree.
Yeah.
Are there any other like experiences that you've had maybe when you were a younger guy or maybe just in general experiences that you've had that have profoundly shaped the way that you interface with the world around you at all?
Yeah, I think the fact that I grew up in China, both China and Western culture,
Absolutely.
yeah, basically I because I grew up in China in the Chinese systematic schools, so not international schools. And if you don't know about Chinese education,
I don't.
it's infamously bad and
That's
corrupt.
surprising to hear. I would have thought that it's like better than anywhere else, right? I mean, don't like
No way.
real. That's so surprising to hear. Because you don't do you think that like the Chinese like cultural places more emphasis on education and things of that nature, or maybe not?
That's actually the number one reason I think that contributes to the terrible situation Chinese education got to this day. It's still very, very um, hard and very inhumane. Chinese schools. Do you know? I used to get up 5 o'clock in the morning and get off school at 7:30.
Jeez,
And
dude.
then when I was back in home, I also need to do homework, and there was a lot of homework. So basically, I slept every day at 12 and wake up at 5:30.
So it's
Basically,
like you're a student, and it's like you're working a full-time job, working overtime 5 days a week. It sounds
yes,
like that's
yes,
insane,
yes.
dude.
Because there are too many people, and the only good educational resources are limited, very limited. So the competition just gets bigger and bigger, and there's no rules to say, oh, let's stop trying to compete with each other, um, since there's no stopping that. So people just try harder and harder, and because of
Sure.
competition, other people also try harder and harder, and turns out the benchmark for universities and good schools just rise and rise and rise, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Oh, yeah, no, it totally makes sense. It's like a
Yeah,
race to
yeah,
the bottom, I guess, in a way, where the threshold is
yeah,
perpetually
yeah,
being
yeah.
increased due to like you said, the competition and things of that nature. That's
Yeah,
interesting, man. I didn't realize how I guess I had heard things like that about how intensive the schooling system is, but I guess I didn't realize it was the effect to which it was that extreme. That's insane, dude.
it's really intense.
What's like the music scene specifically like in China? Like I guess you kind of touched on this earlier, so maybe this is a bit
Yeah.
redundant, but like what like genres are the most popular? Is it all like pop and stuff that's like you said like the four beats and stuff like that? That's kind of like the regnant genre, would you say?
Yeah, in China, whatever's popular in the world is also popular in China, but also Chinese has their own taste in music, I guess. If you ever come to China, have you ever been to China?
No, I'd
Oh,
like
okay.
to someday.
Right,
But
right.
no, the only other countries I've been to are Mexico, Belize, Honduras, England, and Scotland. So I've never been to
All right.
Asia, but I'd like to.
You should definitely come. So if you ever been to China, you'll hear this EDM music remixed as EDM, but there were actually other Chinese songs, like popular
Right.
folk songs.
Yeah.
So that is a huge genre in China.
Wow. So Chinese folk music, that's is that like a popular genre?
A huge popular genre, yeah.
Wow. I'm gonna have to check some of that out. Chinese folk music.
Yeah, I think there was this one Chinese song that went viral on TikTok.
What's it called?
I don't know what's it called, but it's just
No
funny.
worries.
I see a lot of like black people covering that. It's hugely popular.
Do you use TikTok at all, or or any other social media platforms specifically to like market your music, or how, I'm sure you do. Like, what does that look like? How do you market yourself using social media as a new artist?
Yeah, I'm actually ashamed to talk about it because I'm not very diligent on that.
No
Kind of
problem,
slacking
man. I mean, I'm
off.
not very diligent about it. Most of the stuff I'm working on either, so no problem.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Like, okay, I cannot use TikTok because TikTok is banned in China. I use Douyin. Douyin is the Chinese version of TikTok,
Wow.
basically. Yeah.
What are some of the less glorified aspects of making music that most people might not be aware of?
It depends on what kind of role you are in making music. For example, like if you're an artist, then I guess that was your concern, the thing that you have to write dumb shit to cater the audience. But if you're a music producer, or a ghostwriter, which I also do,
Wow.
produce for people and ghostwrite for big artists in China. Um, you just have to, you know, just do whatever they say.
Wow. So, how do you manage to like work with people on like ghostwriting and production? Do you like do outreach to people that whose music you enjoy and say, "Hey, I think I could help you with this," or how do you do that?
uh, I don't think anyone does that. Does
Didn't you
anyone?
just say you like do ghostwriting though for other artists?
No, no, no. As in, like, I don't think any ghostwriter or producers actually come to artists themselves and say, "Can I
Oh,
produce
okay.
for you?" or "Can I
Okay.
write for you?" I think it's all the artists they see your work and they appreciate you and they think you can be their producer or like ghostwriter and then they reach out to me.
Do you enjoy doing that? Getting to write on other people's stuff? Maybe it like allows you to explore different aspects
Yeah,
of your personality in a way that maybe you wouldn't want to put in your own music, but you can kind of explore those tangents in other people's styles. Does that make sense at all?
yeah. Definitely, definitely. I've done hip hop because I've never really done like a real hip hop song before. But through my jobs, through other people's songs, I get to produce hip hop songs, which I'm really happy.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I'm sure it's
Yeah,
also beneficial in the way that it allows you to expand your own musical portfolio.
exactly.
I
That's
mean, I
true.
can see that would be very beneficial. That's cool.
Exactly. And also the things I learned producing other genres of music, I can also fuse into my own. So,
What does cyclists represent? I think your Spotify bio might touch on this a little bit, but if you could speak on that, I'd be really interested to know.
yeah, I think every time I get asked this question, I just say it's a random name.
Sure.
But if
Okay.
you, but if, because I don't like to put meanings in names, because the meaning will fade out. Meaning will fade out,
Right.
and the name will suddenly be cringe or whatever. So
Are you familiar with the American artist FKA Twigs?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So when
Yeah,
she's asked about her, like, what does FKA mean? She's like, nothing. It just sounds cool. I'm like, yeah,
yeah,
it
yeah,
does sound cool. I like that.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Her music's awesome. Cellophane, that's a great song.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
What is your writing process like?
Uh, basically, I produce a beat first, if that's
S-
what you call it,
Yeah, for
or
sure.
like
So
a
you
backing
produce a
track.
right. So you make like the beat and you get the rhythm going, and then what comes next? Do you start like taking walks in nature to become inspired to write lyrics, or what does that look like? Because it's so different for all different artists, right?
And across different countries. For
Sure.
me in Shanghai, there's not a lot of nature in Shanghai. It's a
Right.
big city. I live in the CBD. Yeah, nah, but I don't really need to get inspired too much, believe or not. I just sit there and write songs. I
So
guess that's why people
where do you
hire
think
me
the
to get.
lyrics come from then?
Oh, I'm very good at putting myself in other people's shoes,
Right.
or recalling a certain period of time of my childhood, or like my back experiences from the back in the time, and just start writing songs like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm sorry it's
Um,
boring. I'm
no,
pretty
no, that's
sure you
fine.
you like to hear me going out in the nature and be inspired or something.
No, that's totally fine. And I think that's a
Yeah.
good answer because I think a lot of the times, like what a common theme of successful people is that they're disciplined when it comes to doing the things that are like bland and boring. And they just you talk about, especially like creatives, they'll talk about just sitting down and they'll just wait for whether that's like the muse or their own internal like inspiration to strike. And there's just
Yeah,
there's not always something fancy to it for everyone, it sounds like. So that's why I wanted to ask, because
exactly.
it's like I said, it seems to be so different for all different types of artists, and like you said, across different genres and countries and cultures.
Yeah. And I also feel like a lot of the inspiration stories from big artists are also glorified, and do you know what I mean? It
Yeah,
might
for
not be
sure.
true. It might not be how it really happened.
Like they're stretching the truth because those stories are more marketable, essentially.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
I've known a lot of musicians around me. They all just have memos like on their iPhone. They when every time they need to write a song, they just go through their notes and see if
yeah,
there's any inspirations that they wrote back in
totally.
the day. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
right.
nothing fancy, honestly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to your younger self or to someone who's in a similar position that you were in when you were younger, based on
Yeah,
what you know now?
I would not listen to myself. I would not listen to this advice when I got offered that opportunity to come back to be on this reality show. No, I wouldn't listen to any of that.
So when you were in New Zealand, you were studying. Did you stop the studying specifically so you could be on the reality show?
I was in my first term of master degree studying architecture, and I deferred my degree just to be on the reality show.
Wow.
Um,
And do you ever like think about what life might be like if you didn't do that or if you made like a different decision?
yeah, if I stayed, definitely. I just met my classmate back in university. We were studying the same architecture and landscape architecture double major, and she actually stayed in Australia and got permanent residence just a couple of months ago. And
Wow.
she's working in Sydney full time as an architect.
Wow.
And that's where I would be if I did not come back.
Do you think you would like in any way like be like living like a more normal life, so to speak? Not, I mean, I use the term normal very loosely,
I
but
get what you mean, yeah.
yeah, I mean, do you ever think like you'd be able to do that? Because like you hear a lot about people who work in entertainment that say, "Oh, I could never work a normal job." Like, could you
Like
relate
a
to
nine to
that?
five normal job, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I could definitely relate to that because I've worked 9 to 5 jobs before.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
when I was teaching in English in Shanghai, I was actually in a company working 9 to 5. Yeah.
But
And
that's a
I
lot more
actually that.
I
Yeah.
was just gonna say that's a lot more tolerable than like when you were a student and you had to go from wake up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. and then do homework until, late at night,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I was gonna say I actually enjoyed most of the 9 to 5 jobs,
Oh
honestly.
wow.
Yeah, because my life was regular, I was healthy, and because being free means freedom doesn't matter that much anymore. It's not as valuable as if you have like a regular schedule of 9 to 5 jobs every single day, and every time you get off work, freedom is such like a luxury stuff to you. And if you're freelancing, then all of my times can be arranged freely by myself.
So you think
So
that structure is a
yeah,
very like important thing, is what it sounds like.
yeah, like sometimes people need that kind of push, you know? Otherwise, you need to be really disciplined when you're
Right.
freelancing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with the discipline aspect, right?
Yeah,
I don't know if that's because of
because
just the short dopamine fixes that permeate our society or something else, or maybe a mix of a million different things, but yeah, it seems like
yeah,
people really
because
struggle.
no one's gonna punish you for not waking up at 7 o'clock. You can wake up whenever you want. You can go to sleep whenever you want. So a lot of times your life just gets messed up like that.
Sure. Yeah, very like inconsistent like sleep schedules and that I can imagine that would be difficult. I mean, that's something that I can relate to. It's, it can be difficult to manage at times for sure.
You're working 9 to 5 now.
Not right now. So since
Okay.
2020, I've actually done freelance work in the e-commerce marketing space. So I've worked
Oh,
as
right.
an email marketer and direct response copywriter. So I actually do
Oh,
have a
cool.
bit of a background in writing for e-commerce brands and writing marketing assets and
Cool.
things of that nature. But to be honest with you, just to like be transparent, like over the last year or so, a lot of that stuff has been increasingly challenging to do as a freelancer because those specific services are largely being subsidized by AI. And,
Yeah.
no
Well,
long, yeah, it's like no longer do you really need like a marketing agency to manage your email list. If you can have your regular marketing manager use ChatGPT to kind of manage all of that in a more like centralized way, I guess.
yeah. Well, I can
Um,
imagine, man.
yeah, so I can definitely relate to the struggles of like freelance working. Right now, I've actually over the last like couple months, I've been in the process of trying to find more stable work. And honestly, like starting this podcast is I guess a piece of that, a portfolio piece, if you will, because I
Yep.
really enjoy like inquiry and interviewing people and learning about different things. And so I figured maybe this could be a good start into, ha- like I said, a portfolio piece that can maybe lead to different things. And I'm not exactly sure what that looks like yet, but that's kind of where
Right.
I'm at, just to give you some context about myself.
Right. It sounds really good though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
About AI, I can also relate to that because a big client of mine recently, I haven't talked to her at all. She was a installment artist based in London, right?
Wow.
And a lot of her work requires music. So I was her music producer for a very long time. And ever since AI music came about, she never offered me a single job ever after.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
what kind of impact do you see AI having on the industry as a whole? Because it seems like maybe for certain like computerized like beats, it might be able to help. But when it comes to like songwriting and lyrics, it doesn't seem like maybe it's quite there yet. Do you agree with that analysis, or do you see things differently?
No, I think songwriting in particular is the most threatening aspect of this AI music thing.
Really? So you think it can do a
Yeah,
pretty good job at writing like lyrics and stuff?
not right now, but we're not seeing the best model, are we? Right?
True, true.
And also, this thing grows exponentially, not linearly, right?
Absolutely. It's a really
Yeah,
good
so
point.
and if you ever tried Suno, it's already freakingly good. Like
Suno?
Suno, yeah.
I'm not very familiar. Is that just like a similar like alternative
It's
to ChatGPT?
ChatGPT cannot make music. Oh, well, you can write lyrics, yeah, but like
Okay,
Suno,
okay. I see.
you should check out Suno AI. Suno AI, it's scary.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. That'd be interesting.
Suno. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. I'm always interested about like the different AI tools and how that's like impacting different industries. It seems like it's impacting more than most people want to acknowledge. Like even
Exactly.
you see like in America, like sales teams are even downsizing because it seems like the way that B2B companies are doing sales is more about like use is more of like content driven, which is powered by large language models as opposed to like outreach driven sales. And so you can see even that space changing, which I don't think a lot of people really anticipated happening. So it's definitely impacting like just like the I guess different industries as a whole. And so it's interesting to hear how it affects like things like music. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah, it
interesting.
does. It does affect a lot of things, but you don't hear it as much, right?
No, I guess not. And do you think that's just because most people don't? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I don't, I don't see on social media people like talking about how AI take their jobs, but it must be true that a lot of people lose their job because of AI.
I've seen it on Reddit quite a bit.
Right, right,
Like
right.
people posting on Reddit. And maybe that's just because like it's the anonymous nature of Reddit. You'll see more of that kind of thing. Whereas it's
Yeah, yeah,
a lot of the other social medias. Like for a lot of people, it's just like the highlight reels, and people
yeah,
don't
yeah. True,
really
true.
go to be vulnerable on those platforms. So maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, that's maybe
Um,
that's why. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
One thing that I really wanted to ask you, so in the song God's Will, around 3 minutes and 12 seconds into the song, you
Oh yeah,
sample Paul Bremer announcing the capture of Saddam Hussein. That's a very popular
famous line, right?
soundbite. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a very recognized soundbite to Americans. So I'm very
yeah,
curious to know like the story behind that, and what made you want to sample that.
yeah. I sampled it because I hope one day the real bad guy that caused the world or cause a lot of people affect a lot of people's lives. I wish the real bad guy get caught.
Right. So it's like a tacit
Yes.
or like implicit
Yeah.
nudge at maybe the lesser known aspects of power, I guess. That's very abstract and vague. I'm being vague on purpose, though. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
that it's really cool. I was when I heard that song, I was like, that's hard. That's awesome. That's
That's not,
cool.
yeah, that's
Do you find that it's difficult to speak on political things in your music, being someone who lives in China?
if it's in English, it's relatively okay. But if it's in Chinese, then it's a no-no. It's really
Wow.
sensitive, yeah.
And
There's no
is
way. Yeah.
and why do they not really care if you criticize certain things in English? Is it just because people
Oh,
won't recognize as much, so they kind of let it slide?
yeah. I guess
Right.
that's why.
Got it. Um, can you speak a little about can you speak a little bit about your cross-cultural background? In your Spotify bio, it mentions that a lot of what you write about is your struggles with the cross-cultural background and the identity behind that. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, I guess growing up in China just made me serious and nerdy about a lot of things. Um, and I was more traditional in my mindset about a lot of things. But going out in the world, in Western culture particularly, just made me realize a lot of things don't really matter. And you can just be chill about it and you can speak whatever you want. Um, and now I am in this Western mindset. When I come back to China, people all of a sudden are back to the traditional, conventional Chinese people mindset. And
Right.
a lot of what I say or what I do is seen, not good in China. A lot of my
Really?
friends
See,
were
I was
just,
gonna ask,
yeah,
like, how is that perceived? Is it perceived as like cool and like edgy and like people aspire to be that way, or people just
no, I don't think. So I would perform in different cities in China, right? And the
Mhm.
audience would just complain about English lyrics and your music being too advanced, avant-garde or whatever. And also the way I talk. because I guess sometimes I just cannot help but speak English or say Chinese in a very English mindset, in a very
Oh,
English
sure.
way.
Sure.
And people will be like, why are you pretending to be, not Chinese like that? But it's really just a bilingual thing.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah,
What do
sure.
you think people would be what do you think people would be the most surprised to learn about you?
Oh, I saw this question. I haven't thought about it. I think I'm pretty normal. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just chill.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have like what? I have a huge dick or whatever. No, that's not surprising, is it? For an Asian guy.
Yeah, is that something that you want people to know about you?
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind. My nickname back in high school was Big Wang. Big Wang.
Is that right?
Yeah, because my surname was Wang.
Oh, okay.
Wang. And I didn't know Wan means dick. I asked my chemistry teacher what does Big Wan mean because everyone was chatting Big Wan when I went on stage to perform, like when I was on stage dancing.
Yeah.
Uh, and the whole entire school, they were shouting Big Wan, Big Wan. And
Oh
I asked
my
my chemistry
gosh.
teacher, what was Big Wan? It's a huge dick.
Dude, am I gonna get age restricted now from this?
Oh, right. Oh, shit.
It's all
I've
good.
not thought about it. It's all good.
No, no,
It's
you're
all good.
fine. You can talk about whatever you want, dude. I do not care.
Yeah,
It's I'm
yeah.
all for it. I'm here for it. What are your aspirations in music and in life like?
Right. I want to actually be able to perform all around the world. If I'm able to tour around the world once, I am satisfied. So basically, if you want to be able to tour around the world, you have to have your stream your local data. For example, I can see my Spotify background, Spotify for artists. I can see how many streams is in US or how many streams are from let's say England. And if I have a huge following in England, I can probably perhaps go there and have a tour so that it
Sure.
wouldn't be an empty house. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and then you market to these people. That's how you have a tour.
So your aspirations as far as music would be to be able to travel the world and perform on stage and go to different countries and perform. What aspirations might you have outside of music?
Outside of music,
And if you don't have any, that's totally fine too. I'm just kind of curious.
I guess I haven't really thought about anything outside of music because right now I just want to make this work. To put yourself in this situation, you actually have to sacrifice a lot of the things. For example, if you want to perform on stage, you sometimes cannot be your true self. And because your true self might not be likable. I don't think my true self is likable here in China because I am too Western minded.
Where would you live if you could live anywhere in the world? Like, what would be the ideal living location for you, do you think?
I've never been to New York, but I really think New York will be the perfect place for me. If I'm
Sure.
making that enough money, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, Melbourne is perfect.
Yeah, sure. I've never been to Australia, or New Zealand, but
Right.
it seems like it's very similar in a lot of ways to the US, I
Yeah.
guess.
Right.
Like culturally, like a
Right.
chiller culture. Obviously they have their differences in their cultures, but to me it seems like Australians and Americans and like it seems like we kind of get along really, really well in terms of like our
Yeah.
cultural backgrounds. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's all English world. English worlds share similar culture, I guess.
right, yeah. Except for maybe Ireland. They seem to have their own thing going on.
Yeah. You call that English?
I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah, I'm
they
kidding.
hate the English, right? So,
Right. I'm a huge fan of Conor McGregor.
are you really? Why?
Yeah,
Are you
yeah.
just into like the MMA?
Yeah, man, I'm really into MMA and like this tattoo is actually somewhat inspired by Conor McGregor.
That's a sweet tattoo. I don't know what it means, but it looks pretty cool.
I don't either. It was done in Thailand.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
When
it's
were you in
Thai.
Thailand?
I think a couple of months ago, yeah.
Really
It's just
cool. Well,
traveling, and this is called sakyant. A lot of Hollywood stars got this sakyant because it meant to protect you, like just it means fortune and stuff.
are you like a spiritual guy at all?
No,
No, nor am
no,
I really. Um, I think there's great benefits in like mindfulness disciplines
yeah,
and all that,
definitely,
but I don't necessarily think that would be enough to for me to call myself like a spiritual person per se. But
right.
I'm curious to know a little bit like is that are those types of attitudes popular in China at all, like they are in the West?
No, China is famous for its atheism.
Wow, I guess I didn't really realize that. Yeah, it's interesting to know about like the different spiritual backgrounds of different places because in places like, other parts of Asia such as like India, right? They're super spiritual over there for the most part, right?
Yeah,
Um,
and ignorant. I mean, in
oh,
India,
sure.
a lot of times, yeah. But
Have
I don't mean ignorance and religion are connected, are related. I just mean to say a lot of underdeveloped countrysides, people tend to get
yeah,
religious
sure.
for the lack of better education.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Maybe it's more of like a correlation than causation or maybe a mix of both.
Yeah,
I don't really know.
yeah.
Um, we're so how is religion perceived in general in China?
Uh, as I guess superstitions.
Yeah, and I feel like it's almost like totally antithetical here to where people here are usually believers of some sort or religious in some way on some level. And if you're not, like, I think atheists and agnostics in America are almost like looked down upon, which is
Oh
really weird.
shit. Really?
Yeah, I think
Look
so. Yeah,
down
and
upon.
yeah,
Okay.
like I think atheists are very much ostracized in the Western
Wow.
world. Maybe less so in the last decade or
So
two, but I'd say
would you
just
be scared to say that you're atheist or agnostic?
no, not at all. I
Okay.
mean, I don't really talk about those things. If people ask me, like, I'll tell them I'm a
Right,
non-believer,
right,
right? But
right,
oftentimes, like, people have a hard time with that. To be honest with you, they're like,
right.
"Really? How could you not believe in anything?" Like,
Oh
so
no.
you're just like, or a common thing is like, "Oh, you don't believe in anything. You must be so cold-hearted." Or people who are atheists,
Oh,
they're so
right.
mean and they don't
I
care
think
about others. And it's like, well, no, there's so many reasons to optimize the human experience around love and empathy that have nothing to do with
yeah.
belief in a higher power. At least that's
Yeah, can
my
you say you believe in science? What are other people say?
absolutely. Unfortunately, it seems like even science in America, at least, is such a co-opted industry.
Right. I get what you mean there.
But
Um,
even like just within the scientific community, there's so much like financial stake in people keeping their own jobs that they don't want to come
yeah,
out and
yeah.
talk about certain things that might question or challenge the current narrative. And so it's like even science is like no one
Yeah.
really agrees on what science even is. And we talk about trust the science, and it's like well, science is an iterative thing, and it involves peer
Yeah.
review. And the people saying trust the science are saying, hey, we don't need any other challenging like peer review to try and change what we think
Yeah.
about this. It's just like a very I don't know. It's a lot to
Absolutely
wrap your head
agree.
around. Yeah, it's
Absolutely agree. And it's so funny that we have this conversation I haven't had in years just because no one would talk about it in China.
well, maybe that's something that's similar
Yeah.
in America. I think maybe it's a little bit more common to have this perspective in America, but uh, even so, it's like I really purposely abstain from talking about these things with
Right,
most Americans,
right.
except for like if like my friends are around, I'll express myself openly in those
Yeah, yeah.
contexts. But even people like cousins or aunts and uncles that are just totally in a different like headspace when it comes to those
Yeah.
things. So it can be frustrating, I guess.
Yeah, I
Um,
guess it's because we're educated on different like differently. And
for sure.
we've seen different things. We've seen like not on the same materials. I'm pretty sure if you provide them with the same material you've seen, they will be on the same page with you. Most of the time, we just talk about these things with people that are not entirely on the same page with you, and it's just
Absolutely.
very difficult to talk about it.
Yeah, I think certain people that are part of a certain generation, they're not exposed to the same types of information that people who
exactly.
grew up like with the internet, I think
Yeah,
it
yeah,
changes
yeah,
the game. It really changes the game. Like
yeah,
you're
yeah,
exposed to so many different perspectives that you can kind of begin to parcelate what's good information and what might not be good information. So
yeah, yeah,
I think
exactly.
it's good to try to like reason with
Yeah,
people and even challenge yourself because I definitely don't have all the answers. I'm not a professional in much of
yeah,
anything, let alone in scientific studies. But
yeah. But you
it
have
just
critical
seems
thinking. A
well.
lot of people don't have
That's
that.
that's my point. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Like people don't really want to consider other perspectives a lot of times, and I think that can be very difficult to be present with when people are just so set in their own ways that they're not even. It's like if you ask someone, "Well, what evidence could I present to you that might allow you to consider a
yeah.
new opinion?" And they're like, "None." Which like, well, fuck. Now what? I guess there's nothing we can do at this point.
That's amazing.
Let me look at these questions. I think we covered everything I really wanted to cover. Is there anything else that you'd like to touch on or cover? Is there any questions I should have asked or should have probed deeper on that maybe I failed to do?
No, I feel like this is a perfect interview, and you're very good at it.
Well, thank
You're
you.
very good at it.
Thank you,
Yes.
man.